Okay, welcome to another episode of Insider Knowledge. This week we have Sam Yates, who's the Chief Solutions Officer at Jellyfish. So welcome, Sam. If you can introduce yourself and what your company does, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks very much, Duncan. So I'm Sam Yates. I'm Chief Solutions Officer at Jellyfish for customer success management and our creative technology offering. I've been with Jellyfish for about 2 years, although I joined the company via acquisition, previously working for Splash and Neon Consulting, a MarTech consultancy. So overall, that would have been about a 5-year journey with this company. My background has always been in the development, the design, and the deployment of marketing technology solutions. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through, I'm sure.
Fantastic. I was actually just going through your website as well, which I was very impressed by. Just in the first sort of 2 sections there, your story, but you have a massive focus on your people, which I thought was really good. You go into quite a lot of detail about, I suppose, how you sort of empower your people. So could you just talk through that?
Yeah, so Jellyfish is completely unique as a company. I've never worked anywhere even remotely similar in terms of our laser focus on our people. It's very hard to label exactly what Jellyfish do, but we try and talk about ourselves as a performance marketing agency rather than a marketing performance agency. There's a subtle but important difference. And if we're looking at performance across a wide spectrum of advertising channels these days, we're really having to look at that as a talent race. And obviously, we can talk about the acquisition of talent in the first place, but obviously the retention of talent over time is really, really important. So the focus is really very much on the individual. We have a unique organizational structure where every individual is set up with a personal support network, so we don't have a traditional hierarchy to the business like other companies. And we also have a number of unique approaches to career progression, which are centered around putting the power in the hands of the individual. So each individual in the business is in charge of their own career progression, and the way that we recognize individuals is anonymized through a business case process, which is really revolutionary. It takes out all sorts of bias and challenge that a lot of people have with progression in traditional organization structures. And then, of course, we have a great infrastructure. Our offices are wonderful all around the world. We have good benefits packages, and generally we have thoroughly good engagement amongst everyone within our teams. It's a great place to work.
Brilliant. I mean, it's I suppose one of the key aspects with a lot of organisations is sort of communication. And I sometimes always get into that difficult position where I've got to explain what I do and how I sort of bring sort of return on investment to the company. But if you was to put yourself in that position, I mean, what do you wish everyone understood about your job as a Chief Solutions Officer?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing is that the intersection of technology. So my role, just backing up a little bit, my role is predominantly focused around the development and deployment of technology. That's both our partner technology via the Google Marketing Platform and our proprietary technology suite. And I think that the hardest thing, or what I wish everyone understood most, is that the intersection of technology and business needs is possibly one of the hardest areas to operate in. I don't mean to diminish the roles that anyone else plays, but there are lots of challenges that exist as we as organizations try and leverage the powers of technology. For example, technology companies are very, very adept at selling a vision. They're well VC backed or private equity backed, and they're on big growth journeys, and they're very, very good at pricing their technology and selling it. And quite often there can be a significant overestimation of the impact that technology is going to have, and an underestimation of the effort that it requires to actually adopt technology at the enterprise level. And I think that discrepancy causes a lot of challenge and conflict. You know, when you get midway through a project, an implementation project of new technology, that discrepancy becomes apparent, and it becomes really difficult for organizations to then react to those changes, and it becomes a real granular fight to understand how specific features going to work, how organizations need to change and adapt to map around elements of the technology they're trying to adopt. And I think the issues that arise get labeled technology issues, and I think that's one of the things. I think it'd be great for there to be much broader understanding of the complexity of technology implementations.
Yeah, definitely. I've certainly had that experience before, where I think I worked for a large construction firm called Bouygues, and they implemented Salesforce, and that was such a big beast to implement throughout the whole organisation, and they certainly sort of made a few lessons along the way, but like you said, it's these technology companies, I think sometimes have got to do a better job in terms of promoting the product and a story behind it and how it can integrate with the business and what challenges lie ahead as well. So I think there's so many bells and whistles for a lot of these products. Everyone gets sort of flummoxed by and thought, oh, that looks great, but then they don't look at the potential issues, even adaptation by the employees as well of actually using the product. I think sometimes that can be the hardest thing. Do you find that at all with some of the technology platforms, or when you go into an organisation, about how their employees adapt to it at all?
I think it's really difficult. I think, when you're working at the enterprise level, you've got obviously a vast user base. I mean, you might have some small, medium-sized businesses that have good control over a smaller user group, but at the enterprise level, where you're talking about hundreds, more likely thousands or tens of thousands of users for the very big organizations that might be interacting with a platform, you've naturally got different ways of working, divisional silos, regional silos, different personalities and engagement, that adoption becomes a real challenge, and how people adapt and respond to a piece of technology. It simply isn't possible to, identify a product that absolutely excels and meets or exceeds everyone's expectations. So there's always going to need to be some conflict resolution and engagement with that user base to understand the broader value that the technology can bring. And I think everyone that engaged with a piece of software, I mean, it's probably more likely that people listening have had technology deployed to them than them being involved in deploying the technology out. Like, there's lots of platforms that I've been asked to participate in and use in my experience that haven't been part of my remit, and it's a challenge. They don't always meet the needs, and there are feature gaps, and you can see that it's a real challenge to unite an organization around a new way of working, and it just can't be underestimated.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think, is there anything that's sort of fundamentally changed about how you work, sort of from when you started the job to this sort of present day at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots for sure. I mean, one of the big shifts that's happened in my time, unfortunately, I'm old enough to have really felt the explosion of the SaaS technology platform. So 20 years ago, I was deploying SaaS technology, but it was very, very limited. Digital asset management platforms deployed, across early internet connections, which was really difficult. I mean, people could just simply didn't have the bandwidth. But now, lots of those challenges have very much disappeared, and there's just such a huge volume of technology that's out there, provided by SaaS vendors at competitive price points, hoping that it can be deployed and scaled up quickly. And it's very difficult for organisations to control their engagements with who's deploying what technology within the business. And we're seeing this fragmentation of different marketing technology solutions that are deployed in organizations, and it's not uncommon for organizations to end up with significant overlapping or even quite often duplicate technologies in place, and that's a real challenge today that didn't exist previously. You know, when I started in the industry, people had to work with the tooling that was provided by the company, but we've kind of got this free market space now where it's very, very easy for, you know, a user to go and start using a cloud-based platform for any element of workflow, asset storage, information sharing, and yeah, it's a challenge because it provides incredible, you know, compliance and security, information security risks for the company.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that's sort of the biggest challenge the industry is facing at the moment, or can you see something that's going to sort of drastically change in the next sort of 5 to 10 years at all?
I think we are getting to a point of maybe not saturation, because you know, in the MarTech landscape, we're seeing new channels, new mediums emerging all the time. You know, the metaverse will further shake up the way we engage with consumers. I think it was actually today that Netflix are releasing advertising on their platform. It's another indication of how there are new tools available to advertisers. So the tech platform is always changing, and we will see many new entrants to the market. But we have got to a point where there's so much technology that there will have to be some consolidation and stabilization around the most successful platforms and the ones that work most appropriately. And I think that consolidation will be of benefit. I think also we're seeing marketing and marketing procurement organizations evolve at a rapid pace to be able to deal with the volume of technology vendors that they may need to, and I think that's a real positive step in controlling the ecosystem within marketing teams. You know, the rise of marketing operations is another, alongside, you know, the success marketing procurement teams are. We're seeing much clearer ownership of the platforms that's driving much better consistency and behavior. And of course, then finally, there's a number of other tools that are in place that will enable us to monitor and control what, you know, corporate users are doing, and what platforms that they're engaging with, and enable that we're able to funnel those to the right approved platforms. And I think those things will help sort of stabilize how we deploy technology at the enterprise level.
Yeah, of course. With so many different platforms coming about and so many sort of different technologies you've got to get used to, I suppose it makes it quite difficult to recruit the right talent as well. Especially if you're bringing across a system from, say, America to the UK for the first time, and then you need someone who's got experience of that particular platform. It makes it quite difficult. I mean, is there any sort of challenge you see in terms of recruiting talent in that regards then?
Well, look, if you're deploying a technology platform, there's a lot of the products now have good go-to-market strategies. They either have an internal implementation team, a wide partner network that's available for organizations to leverage, or of course, enterprise clients are bringing in their own teams of project management resource, business analysts, and product specialists that can help through a change management program. So I think there is talent out there. It is a real challenge for organizations how they set themselves up. Firstly, I think there's a big discrepancy between the budgeted amount of what they think a change program will take and what it's actually going to do. The amount of projects I end up being involved with, where midway through or towards the latter part of the project, it becomes abundantly clear that the project's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much, because lots of things have been either missold or completely underestimated. It is part of the challenge. So I think the first step is recognizing what is going to be needed. And, you know, examples of that are, if you're going to bring a change management partner on board, so let's say you've got a professional platform implementation partner for the chosen technology, they can't do it on their own. It's unrealistic to think that the fee that you spend with them will will solve the problem and implement the technology. It's your organization at the end of the day, and I think that having the business engagement and business leadership in place to be able to drive and affect that change is critical. And then that does require a recruitment challenge. It's not purely a project management task or a business analyst task or a practitioner task. It requires someone that does have acute knowledge of the domain that they're supporting. If you're implementing, I mentioned digital asset management before, or e-commerce, or media planning, or any data or CRM platform, you're going to need people that have really got acute subject matter expertise in those technologies to be able to support that program of change at enterprise level if you want it to be a success. And it's painful for organizations to do that, because you've got to be realistic and honest about what the investment of change is going to be, and that actually kills many opportunities from the outset. It becomes very, very hard to justify if you're realistic about those costs. But I would argue that would vastly outweigh the changes and difficulties of overcoming a failed project. If you have to pull away from a vendor midway through an implementation and go back to market, all of that investment it becomes waste, and that's really rife in the industry. I've seen it time and time again. So linking back to recruitment, if we're honest about those challenges and being realistic about the budget, there really is a skills need for organizations to overcome. And I think it's great to have recruitment talent partners in place that can do a lot of the heavy lifting of candidate sourcing, and I think that's really, really important. But I think if you're looking at being a leadership level person in charge of a big technology implementation program, you've got to commit the time to the recruitment process and be really honest with yourself and the candidates, and make sure that you spend time actually screening resumes and CVs in detail, that you have a thorough recruitment process, that you do reference and you do get into the detailed nuance and experience that someone's been through before, because if you find that the right people with the right subject matter expertise, it will be a real anchor point for the project moving forward.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's great. I mean, you certainly gone into quite a lot of sort of detail there, and that's, I say, going through your website as well looks brilliant from a candidate point of view. If anyone's looking to join your company, I definitely can see a lot of reasons why people would sort of get in contact with you, and sort of definitely enjoy working with yourselves as well. I mean, what I suppose a good question I always like to ask people is, what made you join Jellyfish? Was there anything that stood out in terms of whether that's their branding, or maybe a particular process or a particular person that made you join the company? Was there anything that kind of stood out at all?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier, I joined via acquisition. So in part, it would be easy for me to dodge this question and say, well, it wasn't my choice, right? The company was sold that I worked for. But I was part of the leadership team that worked through the sale process. And we're in the fortunate position of being able to really look at the offers that were made for the business at the time, and make a choice. We chose Jellyfish because the cultural fit was really, really strong. The ambition is certainly there, and I think the growth journey has been superb from that perspective. I feel like we're only at the start of that journey as well. So although we're a sizable company with 2,500 employees, or jellies as we call them internally, and 40 plus offices globally, we're really starting to feel like there's some market movement and traction around what we're about, and how we're trying to drive change. And the employee culture is right at the start of that. I mean, when you've been a founder of a business and you go on an acquisition journey, I personally have been through acquisitions that haven't worked out brilliantly, and I think as a leader within the business, you're not just making the choice for yourself, you're making the choice for everyone that works for the company at that time. And we've had really good retention rates through the acquisition process, and I think that's sort of testament to the culture that exists at Jellyfish.
Brilliant. Okay, well, look, we're going to end it there, but I thank you very much for your time. It's been very insightful, and I wish you best of luck for the future, Sam.
Brilliant. Thanks, Duncan. Always a pleasure.
Right, great. Thanks.
Thanks.